Let's queer up entertainment. Angelica Ross slams transphobic atmosphere on set of American Horror Story and bumpy apology from Emma Roberts.
And John is like, okay, ladies, that's enough. Let's, get back to work. And she then looks at me and she goes, don't you mean lady? And she turns around like this and covers her mouth.
Oof. Yeah, post-star Angelica Ross didn't hold back on a recent Instagram Live alleging that co-star Emma Roberts made a transphobic comment to her while on the set of American Horror Story 1984.
I'm looking at her dead ass in the camera like, what the did you just say? I'm like, if I say something, it's gonna be me. That's the problem.
Everything okay?
Yeah, and Angelica also alleged that she wasn't the first person to have issues on set with Emma.
There was someone who spoke up about what she was doing and they got repercussions from it. Not her, they did. Don't play me. You've been playing mind games with everybody on the set. I didn't speak to that the entire time after that.
After the Instagram Live, Angelica reminded her fans what's important in this situation, tweeting, "Let me make something absolutely clear. I appreciate the support, but please do not joke about violence towards Emma. Joke about her being held accountable. Now that's funny." Now, since the Instagram Live, Angelica revealed Emma reached out to her privately to apologize, tweeting, "Thank you at Roberts Emma for calling and apologizing, recognizing your behavior was not that of an ally. I will leave the line open to follow up on your desire to do better and support social justice causes with your platform."
Angelica Ross continues to shed light on the mistreatment she endured on the set of American Horror Story 1984 after boldly speaking up about being subjected to transphobic comments from her castmate Emma Roberts and then getting an apology. The trans Hollywood star is opening up about the awkward conversation. The Pose actress during an interview explained that shortly after calling Ross out for misgendering her in front of co-star John Carroll Lynch, she reached out with an apology, but it wasn't a completely wholesome experience. Talking to The Hollywood Reporter, Ross shared that Emma apologized, saying, quote, "I hate that you walked away from our experience together feeling like that. I see in hindsight what I did and how stupid that was. I'm an ally," end quote. Ross then replied to the apology during the interview saying, quote, "No, you're not. You can't call yourself an ally. It is an action. You need to be real with me in this conversation. I'm being real with you. You were being messy," end quote. During the conversation, Ross also addressed an imbalance of power between African-American cast members and their white counterparts. According to Angelica Roberts and Billie Lourd, were able to make things happen with just their words, and she was not sure if it was a mean girl situation or if she was looking at a woman standing up for herself. This is a tough one, okay? This is a tough one. Let's begin by saying that, I've learned to apologize in AA, right? Okay, just saying you're sorry, I'm sorry, is not an apology, right? You've got to understand and meet the person where they're at and understand why you're apologizing for what you did, okay? So if Angelica Ross is not taking the apology, then the apology unfortunately doesn't ride, all right? I also see the other side of it. Have we become a place now that we can't make mistakes and we can't apologize for our wrongdoings? That also can't happen as well. So it's a tough story to report. It really is. It doesn't seem like Emma Roberts wants to really clear up the air anymore. And maybe, you might just have to walk away from this whole thing, Angelica, as I tried to educate and it didn't work how I hoped it would. The apology was what it was, and we will no longer, deal with each other again.
I see what you're saying. I think that there is a lot of grace in calling people out, actually calling them in for the lesson and for being able to grow and learn, right? Mm-hmm. And so here what we're seeing is we're seeing the Angelica Ross show of the scenario, right? We're seeing the exchange and whatnot, but we're not ever getting sort of did Emma grow? Did Emma, was there a space for growth? Because it sounds like all there is a lot of space for embarrassment, right? And so that, I think, puts her in the defense for a really long time. And I don't know that it should be so public. I really think that it needs to be sort of somewhere in the private setting where people can really learn and grow. It's torturous. It's painful. I hate to learn about it. And I agree with Angelica in many spaces, but there's something about grace in calling people out
Yeah.
and the accountability.
Yeah, and it seems like there's so much, just that there's so much animosity still on the table, and that people aren't willing to completely release the need to hold on to ego or something.
I'm going to change the subject just slightly to ask about the elephant in the room, and that's Ryan Murphy. Ryan Murphy has arguably in the last decade been the most prolific LGBT creative voice in the world, not only in America, not only in entertainment, in the world in terms of how he's represented. American Horror Story, it's funny because it's a beloved show. Delicate has just launched. Over the weekend, I binged Coven and Apocalypse. I've watched every episode in the last 4 days.
Those are the best ones.
And so fabulous. They are so LGBT embracing. And Ryan Murphy simultaneously, in terms of his work at Pose, does anyone feel, because it's alluded to in various different ways, and that's one of the things I hear Orlando say about, this should be more of a private issue, not as publicly fought out in the way this is. Does anybody think that, as it's been alluded to, that Ryan Murphy, white, gay man, was not as good on issues of race and trans?
Well, it certainly seems like that's
That's
based on what Angelica's saying. But I mean, I think it's also interesting that he's not coming out at all in this. I mean, because as a director and producer of an experience, you're at the top of the heap, and you have to have control on how that.
He's sort of responsible for the environment, right?
And also how information is disseminated. And so it's interesting to me that he's not stepped out and made comments.
Yeah, I agree. In this situation, to put it in the most plain way, he's the employer,
Yeah.
right? And in any workplace
He's the
environment,
workplace environment.
I'm saying it's his responsibility.
That's
his
the
responsibility.
underlying
Who's doing HR?
conversation
Who's in charge of
that is
HR?
being discussed.
Yeah.
It would be just, I want to follow the Orlando Gonzalez model of, I hope that they resolve these issues. I hope they can resolve them more privately and get to the end, because it would just be heartbreaking to me that we find that the workplace environment in the Ryan Murphy world is not as embracing on people of color and in the trans community. And unfortunately, one of the things that we keep talking about over and over again in the trans stories, my goodness, Faye and I have done more trans stories than almost any other story in LGBT in 2023 in every possible way. And one of the things that we keep coming back to is women have difficulty on the trans experience. Both cis women and lesbian and queer women. And the other place that has great difficulty on the trans experience is white gay men. And we report on it and show examples of it over and over again. Gosh, I hope that's not what we're watching here in this story. It's being alleged quietly under the surface, but
not anymore. You brought it up.
Yeah, I could have pushed it out there. Thank you. Yes, you're right.
So thank you for thank you for bringing it to light.
Okay, all right.
I do think I think that's what we need to deal with and grapple with.
Yeah,
face it. And we see that there are usual suspects when there is transphobia. There is a population of people that are the usual suspects that continue to surface with an opinion of protecting white supremacy.
Yeah.
And defending this notion, right, that trans women are not women, and they are.
Yeah.
And therefore, there is a reconciliation within the umbrella of the LGBTQ community that needs to happen, and those are the two spaces.
Yeah. Orlando, let's take one more minute, because of your seat at SAVE, you have such a unique eye on this. Do you think that there's progress being made in LGBT inside our community? Let's not talk about outside of our community. That there's progress inside of our community in terms of recognizing value of trans community as part of our community?
It feels like the theme of the day. I've actually talked about it this morning in class, this afternoon at a panel discussion. Yes, there is. But what I continue to say to people is, this is incremental and it is slow. And so are we feeling, leaps of progress. We're not feeling that, but it is incremental, it is slow, and there is involved with this, right? I think that the thematic to the story is that there's healing, there's reconciliation, there are apologies being made, there are moments of letting go of ego, all of that. And all of those things that I mentioned don't happen overnight. They don't resolve themselves overnight. They really take a little bit of time, a little bit of love, a little bit of grace before they're ever really turned over. And this is the moment that we are in.
Okay, so it happens slow, but it happens, right?
That's
We
right.
just have to
And
be
it's happened.
patient for it. And like with that, I was happy this morning when I found out that a friend of the show's, Adriana Tinder, is the new vice president of the Dolphin Democrats, okay? She is the first Black trans woman to be having that role. How incredible is that, all right? So we take our leaps. They're small, and I think because we're engulfed in it and we're like constantly fighting, that we might feel overwhelmed, like it's everywhere. But for everybody else, it's at a snail's pace, but it's happening.
It's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening.